Hi, this is going to be more of a rant rather than a Bible study or topical study. Um, I'll list it under miscellaneous, but I'm sure I'll cover some scriptures. Anyways, in my previous video I made about should we trust the Lord for our daily food or work for it. We know that one of the curses of the Garden of Eden and our fall was that man was going to have to work for his food. It wasn't just going to be handed to him from then onward. And we're supposed to trust in the Lord and pray to him to provide for our needs and have faith that he's going to do so. But then we're also supposed to work for that food. We trust and pray for the jobs and the money to purchase or to grow or enable us to get those daily needs. But on the other hand, we physically have to obtain those things. God doesn't just drop them off on our doorstep every day. In cases of extreme circumstances where you weren't able to have any food and you didn't have the means to save up for any emergencies and you needed food, the Lord would bless you. I believe I've had him work in situations in my life just because now he's enabled me to have to be comfortable enough to be able to prep and save up some extra food and water for emergencies for my family with the money that he provides through my husband's job. Doesn't mean that I haven't had hardships or difficulties in my life. I'm 48, but back in let's say, oh my gosh, like 23 years ago, when I had a 3, 4, and 6-year-old sons, and I was working and my husband was working, and then he got laid off, so he was out of work for a while, and it was just my job that was providing most of our money, and it wasn't enough to pay our bills and our rent and our food. There were times when I had to pray for, we didn't have enough money from our job or my job to supply all our needs, and the Lord met those needs. So in those cases, yes, when it's not possible for you to have that extra money or food or such, then the Lord does provide. And I've had friends bring me groceries. The church gave me food. And an extreme example, I was in line for food back when I was like 25, I think, and at a church that was handing out bags of food. And so I was in line to receive a bag of food, and it was so hot. It was so hot, and I didn't have anything to drink or anything, and I looked in my purse, in the bottom of my purse, for change, because there was somebody there with a cooler, and they were selling like sodas and waters for 50 cents. I only had like 42 cents. And so I had not enough change to even buy a water or a soda. And I desperately wanted something to drink. I think I would have had heat exhaustion if I hadn't received anything. And I didn't even pray for it. I just, I didn't think at that time to pray for all those little things, because he cares about us and cares about the little things and the big. But I was really thirsty, and he knew my needs. And after about 10-15 more minutes, the guy in front of me, a Hispanic man with his wife, and they were in line to get food too, he had a big, he had a thermos, and he handed it to me. So I must have looked like I was going to pass out. I don't know. But he handed it to me, and he told me to drink it. And it was a Gatorade, I think. It was probably a Gatorade mix that they had mixed with water. And I drank it. I drank a lot, and then I was going to give it back to him, and I didn't want to drink it all, and he said, no, drink, he told me to have more. So God provided for my needs, even when I only had 42 cents and I couldn't afford a water. So I know that God can do all things, and I trust him for all those things. But then we use wisdom as well, and we, like my previous video, and I'll put the link for that underneath here, about working for our daily needs. We're supposed to work for our food. If a man doesn't work, he won't eat. And so we're supposed, and the Garden of Eden, the curse to man, that they're going to have to provide for their families. It's not going to come easy, the food, their daily food. But we trust God to give us the rain, and to give us the crops, and to give us the harvest, and to give us the job to buy the food at the store. So although that's where trusting in the Lord to provide for your needs comes in. All right, and another thing that's sort of a hard topic, and I can't get deep into it, but if the Lord gives me the words to say, basically, one of the problems with our society now in 2014 is that we're not self-sufficient enough, and not meaning depending on ourselves, but we depend upon that grocery store, or the doctor's office, or the post office, or the electricity to be able to be turned on, or the water to come out of the faucet. We are dependent on the things that we take for granted, the things that we don't have to work for. We can just pay for it. God is providing for our needs because those utilities or offices and such capitalized on the idea that we need it. And over time, the way civilization and society is built up was somebody provided it and you paid for their service or their good. So goods and services and economy is all good and that, but there's a line where there's a point where we have to realize what happens if that water doesn't come out of the faucet someday. Like if there's a drought, and what if they turned off your water to your house every other day instead of just limiting your water to your plants? Think about that. And you didn't have any water to prepare your food or to sponge bath or whatever on those every other days, okay? What if it got that severe, which it's quite possible? What if the cost of food, a bag of rice, that's like $4 or $5 goes up to $12? Since 2008, I know as a mom and a shopping mother, that a grocery buyer, that groceries have went up 50% since 2008. Most food items have doubled in their price. Some have doubled, some have went up 50%, but some have went up 100%. They've doubled. Okay, so 2008 and then in 2011, we've seen increases in prices. All right, what happens when that gallon of milk isn't $3 or $4 anymore? It's like $10. Okay, doesn't mean it's only going to happen during the seals of Revelation. It could happen before then. There was a Great Depression. People have had famines and pestilence since the beginning of time. There's been incidences where there's been lack of food and there's been disease rampant, and it's been expensive, and there's always been poor, middle class, and rich. Okay, so people we need to be dependent on God, but we also have to use the gifts He's given us. We have to use wisdom, knowledge, understanding, wisdom, using that knowledge, and toil. We need to be willing to work for that food. So if there weren't going to be produce in the store except every other week, and then there's a line that's like a half a mile long, wouldn't it be easier to grow your own vegetables? or have your own fruit trees that can produce fruit in their season, apples, and then peaches and then cherries. Or I'm just saying that we should think about these things and try to familiarize ourselves with some of the things that we've lost in our societies. Things aren't as simple as they used to be, and they're more convenient, but for convenience sake, we let go of some of our self-sufficiency. And even the people that had to rely on planting and harvesting their own crops, they weren't depending on themselves. They were self-sufficient in the fact that they could provide, they were able to grow their own food to provide for themselves, but they trusted in the Lord to bring the rain and to keep the pests away and to cause the increase and to cause the harvest to be good. And they prayed for those things and for the strength to plant it and to harvest it. So, but if we never learn those skills that we don't use anymore, we never plant and try to produce our own fruits and vegetables, or fish and try to catch a fish and skin it and gut it and fry it, or when we get a cut, treat it if it's not bad enough to require stitches instead of running to the doctor and having them put a Band-Aid on it. Or we have a cold, there's no cure for the common cold, and we run to the doctors, and instead of praying to the Lord first for things, people sometimes they'll, I get comments all the time, I'm sure lots of people do, but that, oh, you're not trusting in the Lord to provide for your every needs if you're going to store up food and water for things that could happen. That's not true. I am. He gives my husband his job. I've had years of hard times, and I've had years of good, where he provides well for us. So I know how it is to be in need and want, and how it is to have plenty. And but I'm just saying, if you have enough, not only should you give to those that need, which we're commanded to, but you should be wise stewards with what he's given you, and you should set aside some for the times that may be difficult. And that's what I'm saying that we should do. We should use wisdom, and we should not rely on man to take care of us, but God. Because in essence, when you're waking up and trusting that you're getting your paycheck and that grocery store is going to be open for you to go fill your cupboards and your fridge for the next week to supply your food for the next week, what if those stores are not open? What if the power goes out and there's no, or there's the power goes out, the trucking trucks can't fill their gas tanks because the electric pumps aren't working, and then they can't truck that produce and groceries into your city. Okay? What if the power goes out and you can't heat up your water with your stove, and you need to have wood and some kind of fire pit or something in your backyard that you can boil some water, all right? Or a means to cook as such. Gardening, fishing, hunting, and cooking without modern day stove, and learning how to can and take care of first aid needs, and all these things those are things that are skills, and I believe, and sometimes survival skills, and not only may help you if you're lost in the wilderness, or your kids are and they need to start a fire and know how to do so and heat that water, or the things that they can and can't eat that are out there, but also if the conveniences of everyday living go out and you're not able to use those things. If you can't get to the store, you can't use your fridge, you can't use your stove, what are you going to do? Or you can't run to the doctors. and treat a problem that comes up. So knowing these skills and means of taking care of ourselves and our family are just they're just obtaining knowledge, and they're just using what God's given us, common sense and knowledge, and they do not take away dependence on Him, because actually it requires more dependence on Him, because we have to trust that He's going to enable us to do all those things if and when the need arises. But what I'm saying is we should practice, and we should acknowledge the fact that we need to be more aware of those skills, and maybe, learning some of those things before it's too late. And, like I said, people run to the doctors for a cold, but there's no cure for a common cold. And but there are homeopathic things that you can do to help it, and to boost your immune system, and to help you get over that cold quicker, and to alleviate the symptoms. So that's, researching that and finding out that and knowing what to do when that happens is going to be way more beneficial than spending the gas money and the time to go to the doctor's office when they're not going to be able to give you anything except tell you to get plenty of rest and drink water and take some ibuprofen. So people will comment, people will say, oh, you're not trusting in the Lord, when you're trying to be self-sufficient and have the things needed for those circumstances, for when people are sick, or when there's a disaster, or, having emergency bags in case there's an earthquake. But they're going to be the ones that are not going to be able to take care of themselves when there is a crisis. And they're the ones that are actually depending more on the system and man and what he has to offer than God, because they're the ones that run to the doctors for every sniffle or every cut, or to the grocery store, and they believe that it's going to be open every day, and someday it may not, or trust that water is going to flow right out of their faucets every day, when maybe one day it won't. So we just need to take these things to the Lord, our care, cast all your cares upon Him, for He cares for you, and trust Him in all things, and in everything raise it up in prayer and supplication to the Lord. But then we also need to examine ourselves, and we need to remember that the Lord's put us in charge of our kids and our wives, the husbands, as providers, and as nurturers, and as teachers, and we're supposed to hand down that knowledge and instill that commitment to work to take care of ourselves. All right, so with that said, I hope it made sense what I was trying to portray, and I just think people have gotten way too dependent on society and what it has to offer, instead of actually relying on the Lord and learning how to take care of themselves. And this is something that we should pray for and seek the Lord on. Don't just take my advice, and pray about maybe changing some of those things. That's what He's put on my heart, and if circumstances ever change, I want my kids to be able to know how to take care of themselves, and pray, of course, because for protection and for guidance and for the ability and opportunity to get their food, but to also know where they can find it, and how they can clean it, and how they can distill it or purify it, and what they can eat and what they can't eat. So I hope it made sense, and thank you for listening, and share or like as you see, and if you click dislike, please let me know why, and God bless.